In the spiritual traditions, one of the most intriguing statements uttered by the sages is this: I am the self. There are many versions of this. For example, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman in Advaita. Tat Vam Asi, thou art that, Advaita. Anal Haq, I am the truth, Sufism. And I and the Father are one, Christianity. We are going to use the consciousness-based cosmos model to discuss the meaning of this statement. Is it right? Under what condition is it true? Let's begin by analyzing who the self is from the perspective of the model. Those who are not familiar with the consciousness-based cosmos model that we are using should refer to the following videos. Number 3, characteristic. Number 4, simplified model. Number 5, analogy. And number 7, spiritual concepts. The links are given in the description below. In developing the model, we use only one assumption. There is consciousness, or there is the self. Or to be more precise, there is the one and only consciousness, or there is the one and only self. Everything else that comes thereafter are mere appearances in consciousness. Time, space, matter, the entire cosmos of insentient things and sentient beings are all creations of consciousness within consciousness. There is no physical reality or entity behind any perception of the cosmos. All appearances are moment to moment. They are apparently real, but not physically real. When a sentient being is made conscious by the self, the consciousness that is given to the sentient being is not different or separate or apart from the self-consciousness. There is only one consciousness. It is one and the same. But it is easy to misunderstand this because when a being is made conscious, a new version of the appearance of the cosmos will appear to that sentient being. Thus, there will be as many versions as there are sentient beings in the cosmos. The sentient being will be at the center, looking at the rest of the cosmos, extending infinitely in all directions. This is due to the subjective nature of consciousness. This version of the appearance of the cosmos is only accessible to that sentient being. It is not accessible to other sentient beings. Thus, from the perspective of the sentient being, there appear to be many sentient beings, many consciousness. But it is different from the perspective of the self. Being the source of consciousness, the self can perceive his own version of the appearance of the cosmos, plus each and every one of these versions of the appearances of the cosmos for the sentient beings. Thus, from the perspective of the self, there is really only one. The many is only apparently so. Thus, it can be said that the self is the source or origin, the ground or foundation, and the end or the finality of all that exists. It has to be remembered that the self has two modes, the manifested and the unmanifested. In the unmanifested mode, nothing has arisen in consciousness for the self to be aware of. In the manifested mode, something has arisen in consciousness for the self to be aware of. It can be an entire cosmos, or it can be a simple thought. For example, I am that I am. It should be noted also that any appearance in consciousness is always a moment to moment. This is due to the now nature of consciousness. It appears, then disappears, then reappears. It is not permanent. When an appearance disappears, the pure self remains. Thus, it can be said that the unmanifested mode of the self is the more natural state. In this pure state, there is not the slightest movement out of it. The self in this state cannot say I, neither can it know anything, since there is nothing as yet that has arisen that can be known. When a being is made sentient, the cosmos along with the body will appear to the being. with the body appearing at the center of the cosmos. If the sentient being identifies with the body, saying and believing, I am this body, he becomes an ego personality. For such a being to say, I am the self, is of course false and inappropriate. It will be a gross contradiction. Him saying so is a mere repetition of the statement without any meaningful significance. The sage, on the other hand, doesn't identify with the body. He no longer has the ego personality, having successful in dissolving it. He is the egoless identity. He knows that the body and the cosmos are mere appearances in his own consciousness. He is the dimensionless point at the center from which the body and the entire cosmos appear to emanate. Is it right for the sage to say, I am the self? Just as the self has two modes, manifested and unmanifested, the sage has two states, the normal and the deeper. The normal state corresponds to the manifested mode of the self. Even though the sage doesn't identify with his body, the cosmos and the body still appear to him. The sage, just like other sentient beings, can only perceive his own version of the appearance of the cosmos. The self, on the other hand, is different. He can perceive his own version of the appearance of the cosmos, plus all other versions for all the sentient beings. Thus, the sage version of the cosmos is very different from the self's. Therefore, in this normal state, it is not quite right for the sage to say, I am the self. The difference is very obvious. The deeper state of the sage corresponds to the unmanifested mode of the self. Just as nothing has a reason for the self in the unmanifested mode, and nothing too has a reason for the sage in this deeper state. In other words, the cosmos ceases to appear for the sage. That doesn't mean the sage ceases to exist. His body is still perceived by the other sentient beings, living his usual life and doing his usual activities. But the sage himself is unaware of it all. This deeper state is indistinguishable from the unmanifested mode of the self. It is to this similarity that the sage is alluding to when he says, I am the self. If understood as such, the statement is of course very true.